Let's now bring in Edmund Fitton-Brown, former British ambassador to Yemen, now a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies. Edmund, interesting to talk to you, given that Yemen was also a country that was attacked by Israel in the past. Then they were targeting Iranians, so it's not the first time they've carried out an attack in this way. But how significant would you say what has happened today?
Well, this is a change because we're talking about a GCC country. In the case of Yemen, of course, the Israelis were attacking Houthi targets, and they were only attacking them in response to Houthi attacks on Israel. So I think your previous guest made an important point about the attitude of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, because he gave a last warning to Hamas on Sunday. And the Israelis are saying that they informed the Americans in advance of this. And it is hard to conclude anything other than that the Americans gave them the green light. But of course, we don't know that yet.
In terms of countries that are lining up behind Doha to support them, so far the United Arab Emirates, Iran and Saudi Arabia have all stood squarely behind Doha and said how the UAE says they've stood behind a treacherous attack, called it blatant and cowardly. Iran has called it an international violation of law. Saudi Arabia has warned against the consequences of these criminal violations. Do you think this changes anything in the geopolitics of this part of the world?
I think it's too soon to say. It's important to separate what Iran says from what the Saudis and the Emiratis say. The Iranian reaction to this is entirely predictable, and Iran doesn't have any credibility internationally. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates do have a great deal of credibility internationally. Of course, they are both part of the Gulf Cooperation Council, along with Qatar. Now, the Gulf Cooperation Council is actually quite a close alliance, even though there have been tensions within it, particularly between Qatar and the UAE and between Qatar and Saudi Arabia in the past. So what we have to try to analyze is how angry are the Saudis and the Emiratis about this? They would be expected to be critical of the strike because they have to show solidarity with their ally Qatar. But what we don't really know is how much anger there is behind these statements.
We've just had, actually, as we're speaking, some statements via Reuters from Saudi's Crown Prince. We know that he has already said that he's warned against these dire consequences. Well, we now understand that he has spoken with the Qatari Emir and that he has also affirmed his kingdom's support to deploy all capabilities to support Qatar after the Israeli attack. So what would you read into that, this suggestion that potentially, sounds like military support? I mean, I presume it's political support.
Well, it's certainly political support. I very much doubt that it would be meaningful military support. I can't see that any country in the Arabian Peninsula is looking to actually start a military confrontation with Israel. One of the things that I think is important to remember is that this is not the first attack on Qatari soil this year. The Iranians also launched an attack on Qatari soil earlier this year. And of course, people were angry about that, and there was a good deal of condemnation, but the incident was contained.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a good reminder that you have done this. I mean, in terms of future negotiations about the peace in Gaza, will this stop other countries in the Middle East hosting such negotiations, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, there's obviously a real difficulty over the Qatari role with Hamas. And the Qataris will say that, it was understood that they were trying to negotiate and help negotiations. The Israelis have argued since the 7th of October 2023 that the game has changed and that Hamas can no longer be tolerated as a party in the way that it used to be. In my view, the really important question is, has this in any way inconvenienced the American attempts to bring about a deal between the Israelis and Hamas and a ceasefire? Now, I assume, given that Donald Trump made that last warning statement on Sunday and that the Israelis say that they consulted the Americans first, I can only assume that when Donald Trump spoke of the last warning, he also then said, and this is okay because we don't think Hamas is responding positively. But if this has disrupted American efforts towards a ceasefire, then that will be more problematic.
Do you think what happened on Monday, the bus attack in which 6 people died, was sort of the prod that Israel needed to actually feel that this was the right time?
Well, I mean, that's obviously something one can speculate. It looks as if the attack was quite precisely targeted. I don't know yet whether the attack achieved its objective, which seems to have been primarily aimed against Hamas leadership figures in Doha. But if the Israelis were looking for a precisely targeted attack, then it may have been operationally driven rather than caused by the attack yesterday.
Edmund Fitton-Brown, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracy and former British Ambassador to Yemen. Thank you very much. Very interesting to talk to you today.